difficult enough attending the funeral of any child, let alone a child who suffered before her death and died so violently.
Well, her grandpa, Karyn Maughan, is a very religious man, and he was actually the pastor who led the service. And he actually articulated that at one moment in his sermon. He just said, I can't imagine what she went through, what was going through her head. Because remember, Joanne, that the person who's allegedly responsible for her rape and murder was in fact a relative. It's her father's stepbrother, doesn't share a surname. And she apparently loved this guy. She would fling her arms around him. She wanted to be around him. And the grandfather just articulating that horror of what was going on in this little girl's mind. And he said, that he's prayed to God, and God has told him that at the end he just took her away and she didn't suffer. And I think that is where this family is trying to seek comfort, that sense of, like something helping her to get through it, and that she didn't suffer in those final moments when she died.
I think what was quite, perhaps not surprising, but shocking in a way, was the response from community members yesterday, who repeatedly said on camera to us, give him to us. We'll do what we have to do for him. There seems to be a burning desire in that community for mob justice.
Well, I mean, this is something that we see reflected in all echelons of our society, just this complete exhaustion with the violence that is inflicted on children and women and even men in this country, and the sense that little children are not allowed to go out in the street on their own, that you have to watch your children like a hawk. And the thing that was articulated by the grandfather was that this was a person that they trusted, that they didn't see anything wrong with them. There was nothing. He was in fact in a gay relationship with his boyfriend who was living in the house. So they didn't identify him as a threat. And just saying to the community, please take care of your children. Please watch them. And unfortunately, we live in a society now where those close to children are often the ones that will violate that trust and will abuse children. And I think, when one hears the details of what happened to this little girl, that she was raped, that the state of her body was in a very bad way when it was discovered, the grandfather articulating how he begged the police to let him see her body, because he'd in fact been sitting on that bed where her body was subsequently found, being interviewed by the police. And he said, no, he really wanted to see her. And they said to him in Afrikaans, meneer, jy wil dit nie sien nie. And they kept repeating it. So we know that this child went through a really, really horrendous death. And even as a reporter, you do feel that rage, because it's so needless and stupid and sad. And this family is robbed of this little girl, and this little girl's life ends at the age of 4. And for what?
It's interesting that these appeals for mob justice, which clearly will not be quenched because our justice system would simply not allow for that, very fortunately, but that anger seems to be turned on the parents right now.
Well, there's a thing called re-victimization in many forms with criminality, and it's very unfortunate because, we've seen scenarios where people who suffer very horrendous violence are subsequently victimized, and there's an attempt to rationalize, particularly women who are raped, oh, but you did this, and maybe you provoked them like this, or X, Y, Z. Now we see a scenario where a little child who is innocent, who plays no part in this crime, is victimized in this horrendous way. And that same kind of weird pattern of rationalization happens, except it's directed at her very young parents, and it's, well, why did you leave this child with these people? What needs to be remembered is, and we still don't know the full extent of the investigation, it will be very interesting to see what the exact landscape of this case is, but the child was left with her grandmother and the accused and his boyfriend, and the father really didn't have a sense that she was in any danger. I know that he feels massive levels of regret. I know that guilt and regret will track with him for the rest of his life. But on an objective level, I don't know that you can direct blame at him in that scenario.
Karyn Maughan, a very tragic story indeed. Thank you very much for covering that for us.
Know more. eNCA.com